Hello everyone, it's Sharon, and we are sitting down for a story time video today. As you can tell by the title, this is the story about my experience with getting bit by a brown recluse spider. Today marks the 3-year anniversary of getting bit, and it's quite the story, and I wanted to share it with you. I'll include pictures at the end, but I'll let you know now, they're graphic, so if you're squeamish, I'll give you a warning before I put in those pictures, so you don't have to look at them if you don't want to. But if you kind of like that sort of thing, it's really interesting. I went through a lot of progression with the spider bite, so I'll show you now what it looks like. Today being 3 years, it looks pretty good, honestly. It does span from about here to here. I actually woke up this morning and it was really itchy. I was itching it like crazy, and I thought, wow, of course on the 3-year anniversary it's bothering me. So that's my aftermath scar from this. So I'll just hop into the story, try to get through it pretty quickly, get into the pictures at the end. If you are one of those people that likes kind of gross stuff, I know me personally, it's one of those things that I don't want to look, but I want to look, you know what I mean? Or popping pimples, I think is gross, but really fun too. So I'm one of those people. If you are too, stay tuned for those photos. Yeah, so I'll just get started. So 3 years ago today, this is probably going up a few days after this, but today is Monday the 7th. So 3 years ago today, I woke up with a bruise on the back of my arm. I was living in an apartment on my own. I was newly engaged, and I woke up, and you just kind of scratch when you wake up, and I scratched the back of my arm, and I was like, ow, that hurts. And so I looked in the bathroom mirror, and I had a bruise on the back of my arm. I'll insert that picture here because it's not very graphic. If anything's not super graphic, I'll insert them kind of along the way just so you can understand. So this is what it looked like when I woke up that morning. And I actually had an appointment to go to my lady doctor to get on, I was getting birth control implanted in my arm, because I was going to get married in a few months. So I was going for that. And so I thought, this doesn't look normal. I don't really know what it is. To preface it, I went to the Third Day concert the night before with my dad and brothers. And I was like, I didn't do anything at that concert to get a bruise like that on the back of my arm. I didn't hit it on anything. It's not like there were mosh pits. It was a Christian concert. So I woke up what is this? And I thought, well, I'm going to that doctor anyways. She'll maybe at least be able to tell me something, right? So I get ready for the day, and I'm sending a picture to my mom what it looks like, and it just sort of hurts, like a bad bruise, right? It's really tender. So I get to the doctor that morning. I show her. She goes, I don't know what that is, but you should get it checked out. And I would say within the hour or so, hour and a half of so, me waking up to getting to the doctor, the bruise had already grown. So she said, well, there's an urgent care next door. You could go there. So I went to urgent care, and, as I'm filling out the paperwork, I'm getting really cold. And I mean, I do run cold always. And I'm wearing just a t-shirt and jeans because, it's the beginning of June. We're starting to get into summertime. So they had AC on. But I'm getting really cold in this waiting room, and so cold that I'm shaking. I'm having a hard time just sitting still. I'm shaking, filling out this paperwork, and I'm just starting to not feel good. I'm just starting to feel bad. And I still to this day don't know how much of it was attributed to the bite itself and how much of it was just me being kind of anxious about the whole situation, not knowing what it was, it being hurt, me being cold. I've never been gone to urgent care before. This was a first for me. So I'm texting my mom. She's not responding to me back. My now husband was at work, so I wasn't gonna pull him away when I knew my mom was at home, not far away. So I'm filling out all the paperwork. It's starting to hurt even worse. I'm starting to not feel very good. Kind of nauseous. And I get back to see the doctor at the urgent care, and they look at me. They take my temperature. They do everything. They look at it. Finally, my mom gets there, and she was able to come back with me. By the time she got there, I was just shaking, uncontrollably, wanting to cry. I was so cold. I couldn't stop shaking, all over. The doctor ended up kind of diagnosing it as a tick bite. She thought that it was maybe a deer tick that had bit me. And that's what I was reacting to. So she prescribed me some medicine and sent us on our way. By the time I'm getting out of there, like, I think I'm going to throw up. I think I'm going to pass out. Like, I don't feel good at all. So I determined, like, I can't even drive to my parents' house. Like, I need my mom to drive me. So my mom drives me to the grocery store to get my prescription filled. And originally I was just going to stay in the car. I was going to have my mom get it. But of course, you know, I'm an adult now. They needed my insurance card. So I had to end up going in. And I was so miserable. And I know I looked miserable. Like, I was just going down by the minute, feeling worse and worse and worse. And again, we still thought it was a tick bite at this point. So I'm sitting waiting for my prescription, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I feel like I'm going to pass out, like, all at once. Like, I'm shaking, I'm cold, like, I'm miserable. So I get back to my parents' house, you know, get some medicine. My family, we were a bunch of sharers. I mean, great example. I'm on YouTube sharing my thoughts and this story. We don't really hide a lot unless it's like super, super personal. Like, we share it with people we know. So my mom gets on Facebook right away, takes pictures of it, you know, shows Facebook like, hey, this is what's going on. Does anyone know what this might be? And people start chiming in like, oh, I was bit by a spider. That looks like a spider bite to me. That looks like a brown recluse bite. So that's what they keep chiming in saying. Oh, by the time I got home to my parents' house, I also had a fever. We took my temperature again, and from getting to the urgent care to getting home, I developed a fever. It was like over 100 degrees. So I'm not feeling good, but I'm also freezing. It was one of those where, like, I'm freezing cold and I want to be covered up, but I had a fever, so I couldn't be. So I'm like miserable. And my mom calls one of her friends that's a nurse. She comes over to kind of evaluate me. We're trying to figure out what's going to happen. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. So that first night I didn't want to stay at my parents' house. You know, at the time I just had my one pug, Francis, but my parents had 4 dogs, and like, I just wanted to be in my own bed. So I opted to go back to my apartment that night and stay in my apartment. My fiance came, well, husband now, came and stayed overnight with me because we didn't live together. So he came and stayed with me all night, and it was just getting so painful. My fever finally went away, but like, the arm itself was just so painful. It hurt so bad to move at all. And he basically stayed awake all night long. He kept texting my mom updates because the thing we were concerned about is how the bite was going to evolve. It had already started forming these kind of like sacs on the back of my arm. I'll put a picture up here so you can see that. Again, not super graphic just yet, just kind of gross. So it was starting to form these sacs, and the thing we were concerned about was that those sacs would burst, and then I would have an open wound on my arm, and we would need to go to the emergency room, or if my fever came back, you know, maybe need to go to the emergency room and figure something out. So basically Chase was awake all night long with me while I was attempting to try to sleep. I mean, it was painful. I couldn't ever get comfortable. If I moved just a little bit, oh, it hurt so bad. So the next day we wake up and I get in to see my primary care doctor, and my mom and my husband went with me. Just driving hurt. If you hit a bump and my arm moved, oh, it hurts so bad because, you know, it's behind my arm, so it's hitting my body. If I don't hold it just right, you know, it's hitting me. Super painful. Still don't exactly know what it is. Like, we're pretty sure at this point it's a spider bite. So we get in to see my primary care doctor. I'm also super nauseous this whole time. Like, it's just making me feel crappy. I have zero energy. I'm super nauseous. We were sitting at the doctor, and I thought I was going to throw up. So, like, my husband went across the street to Dollar General and got me some saltine crackers because I felt like I needed to eat something. So I'm, like, eating crackers in the waiting room. I see my doctor. She's like, yeah, I'm 99.9% sure this is a brown recluse bite. There was no way to 100% determine that because I didn't find the spider. Like, I didn't know. I didn't see it. I got bit in the middle of the night. So there was no way to 100% to test that. But, like, based on my experience, we're 99.9% sure it was a brown recluse bite. So what we learned from my doctor is that a couple of things. There is no, like, anti-venom for a brown recluse bite. You just have to let it take its course. There's nothing you could do to prevent it other than just take antibiotics because you don't want to get an infection from the bite itself. Because the other thing we learned is that brown recluse spiders are very dirty spiders. They don't I guess, clean their faces like some other spiders do. They can also go a very long period of time without eating or drinking anything. So their mouths can be very dirty. So that was the concern there, is that I could get an infection if the spider itself had something, you know, on its mouth that infected me. So they gave me antibiotics for that. They took me off whatever it was the urgent care person gave me, because they're like, that won't do anything for you. Stop taking that. Take this. So I went on an antibiotic, and basically now we were like, we're going to see how it, you know, charts its course. We got to figure out what's going to happen. Because we just didn't know. Basically, everyone progresses differently with a spider bite. So we left it with the doctor that I was going to come in every other day to see her and how it was going. And of course, if anything drastic happened, like overnight, you know, go to the emergency room. So I started doing that. I started having 8 a.m. appointments every other day with my doctor. After I went on those antibiotics, I woke up the next morning completely swollen and had a rash all over my entire body. I was allergic to whatever antibiotic it was they gave me. So I woke up that morning and I couldn't put like my engagement ring on. I had little red speckles all over my legs and hands, and again, like, I'm feeling so crappy. So we get to the doctor that morning. She's like, well, you're allergic to that antibiotic. Stop taking that. So I couldn't even take what they were trying to give me because I was allergic to it. So you know, it's still starting to progress. I have those sacs on the backs of my arm. So they gave me like a cotton sleeve they would put on someone's arm, like for a bone break, you know, what they put on your arm before they wrap it up. So she gave me those that I was supposed to keep over my arm, because, you know, we didn't want to wrap it tightly because we didn't want pressure on it, but we also didn't want it completely exposed to the elements in case something hit me or it did break open. We wanted there to be some sort of barrier. So I wore that over my arm. And then, you know, I'm still going through the motions. I'm feeling really crappy. Like, I just have no energy. That's the biggest thing I can take away, is that it was really, really painful and I had no energy. I did also have the nausea. That eventually did go away. That didn't stay with me. That was only the first few days, was that I had nausea and didn't really want to eat anything. But I was very, very fatigued, very much in pain. Like I said, we were also newly engaged. We were trying to get things done with the wedding. We needed to find a place to live. We needed to register for gifts. So with not really knowing how it would progress, I was trying to force myself to go and continue life as normal when I probably should have taken it easy. So I remember we went that weekend to register for gifts at Target. We were maybe there for 5 minutes, and I literally had to sit down in the middle of the aisle because I was just so exhausted. And as soon as I would start to get tired, I would start to feel nauseous. Like, it's like they went kind of hand in hand. If I pushed too hard, I'd feel nauseous. So I'm like, I have to sit. Like, I feel shaky and just bad. So I literally sat in the aisle at Target until I felt good enough to get up and say, we've got to leave. I just can't keep going. So that happened to me a couple of times, and I finally had to realize, like, stop pushing yourself. You just need to take it easy. So as the days progress, the sacs on my arm finally break. I was working half days. I don't think I mentioned that. My doctor had to write me a note where I was only working like 4 hours a day because I couldn't even focus at my job because I was so drained of energy and my focus was just not there. I just couldn't. And I would just feel too bad. If I pushed too hard during the day, I would start to feel horrible. So for about 2 weeks, I think I was working like half days. But one of the days I showed up to work for my half day, I had just gotten there, and one of my coworkers comes up and says, Sharon, you're bleeding. I'm like, what? Like, I didn't feel anything, but the sacs had burst. So I was carrying around basically like a bag of first aid stuff. And I said, okay, well, I've got all my stuff. I need someone to help me. Like, I need you to bandage me up till I can get to the doctor. So one of my brave coworkers, thank you, Sonia, if you happen to see this, said, I'll do it. And we went into the bathroom with all my stuff, like my antiseptic and my gauze and all of that. And she helped wrap up my arm so that it wasn't exposed the rest of the day. And I just, went about my business. And basically what happened next, over the next week or so, or 2 weeks, my arm started deteriorating. The poison was just eating away at my flesh. It was necrotizing. That's, I think, the correct word. And it was just eating away at my skin. So I did have these nasty looking, holes in my arm. They got pretty big. I mean, you can see the whole length of the scar. Like, they got pretty big. And again, I'll insert pictures at the end if you want to see. I just don't want to put them in the duration if you're squeamish. So yeah, so that's starting to happen. They're starting to eat away at me, and we're having to keep it clean and dry. So we're doing that, and once they start getting deeper wounds, we decide we need to see the wound care specialist. So I go to the hospital, see the wound care specialist, and they decide we need to like cut it out. Like, that's the next step. I've basically let it run its course as best we can, and now we need to try to cut out the area that has been eaten away. I guess you can't do that in the beginning because you have to see how far it's gonna go and stop before you can do that. That's my understanding. So I saw the wound care specialist twice, and she cut it out, packed it, like did all the things. And she was under the impression that I'd probably need a skin graft to heal properly because it was such a large area that it covered. And it was such a large wound and tall that there were no really good bandages that you could put on it. So we ended up having to buy bandages that they would put on like elderly people for bed sores. They were really large, kind of like a heart-shaped sticky pad, sort of. So I was wearing those on the back of my arm, just like gauze wrapped around my arm to hold it in place. And let me tell you, it was painful too, getting this stuff dug out. It was painful. I mean, they numbed the area, but it was painful. And that's something that continued. The pain continued on the entire duration, basically. It stopped being as severe once we started cutting things out, but then it's still painful, right? So I saw the wound care specialist twice. After the second time, I was then going to see my mom's nurse friend that I mentioned before every other day at her house, and she was cleaning out the wound, cleaning it back up, packing it with the stuff that it needed to be packed with, wrapping me up, and that part was painful too, because I don't know what it was they packed in there. I'm not a medical professional, but they, packed something in there to absorb like the liquids and fluids and stuff in your arm. So she was having to do that every other day, and when she would pick out the old stuff, ooh, that hurt. I can like still feel like I remember it. She would use like long Q-tips to pick it out, and every now and then she'd hit an area that it would just like hit a nerve, and it would just feel like she jammed the Q-tip into my arm and left it there. Like, that's the only way I can describe that, is if someone jammed it into you and just left it in your body. That's kind of how it felt. Not pleasant, you can imagine. So that's all happening, and we get referred finally to a plastic surgeon because we did think we're gonna have to do something. I'm getting married in like 2 months, okay? And I had this giant hole in the back of my arm. By the time I saw the wound care specialist and she was digging everything out, I had 2 holes on my arm that had like a bridge of skin sort of connecting it. Again, you'll see it in the photos at the end if you watch. But it tunneled underneath. So it's like the holes were connected but not at the same time, if that makes sense. And it ended up being, I think she said, a 1/2 inch deep into my arm, the holes were. So we had to kind of wait for it to heal as best as it could on its own before I could see the plastic surgeon. So I get referred to the plastic surgeon, make the appointment with him. He looks at it, and like, it's the best news ever. Honestly, I'm worried I'm gonna need a skin graft. This is happening 2 months before I'm supposed to get married. And the doctor looks at the thing and he goes, "Oh, this is great. We're just gonna cut it kind of in a cat eye shape, like cat eye shape, and then stitch it up." He's like, "Yeah, no skin graft at all. Like, this is best case scenario. Like, the shape of it's perfect. But I'm going on vacation, so you're gonna have to wait like 2 more weeks." And I was like, "Well, that's not gonna work for me. Can you cancel your vacation?" He didn't agree. He didn't want to cancel his vacation. So I waited patiently and went in to get stitched up. And I remember I was so excited. The nurse kept wanting to hold my hand because I was awake for it. They didn't like need to put me under or anything. They just numbed the area. And his nurse kept wanting to like hold my hand like I was scared or something. And I'm like, "Listen, this is like the best day of my life. It's like I'm going to Disneyland or something. I'm excited. Stitch me up. I've been waiting for this." I've never been one that's been scared of any sort of doctor, so That's never an issue for me, and I was there to get fixed. Like, I was not scared whatsoever. I'm like, stitch me up, I'm ready to go. He also stitched me up like the day before my bachelorette party, so he was very cautious to tell me, like, be careful, don't like exert yourself too much, don't do too much arm raising, because the worry was that either I could break the stitches open and it would bleed. I think that was really the main worry, is that I could break the stitches open and it could bleed, and that's what we were trying to avoid, so I had to be pretty careful. But that was totally fine. I was thrilled to be stitched up. So that is all happening like a month and a half before the wedding. I think I finally got stitched up, and I got the stitches, you know, out in a few weeks, and it's all looking pretty good now. It's kind of a long-winded story, but yeah, I'll insert the progression of the pictures here in a few minutes so you can see them if you're interested, because that really is the cool part, I think, is to see how it progressed, because it did progress quite a bit, and we were very good to take pictures pretty much the whole way to document like what happened. So, and you know what, we did determine it was 100% a brown recluse bite, because I found brown recluse in my apartment. I forgot that. So I mentioned before we weren't sure, we're sure it was brown recluse. So I called my apartment complex basically after this happened, like the first day, and I told them, I said, I think I got bit by a spider. Like, can you do something? So just in the time that like I had gone to urgent care, but to the time I got home to my apartment, they had sent someone from like pest control to spray in my apartment, because they were spraying outside the apartment but not inside. So they sprayed inside, and they also put down sticky traps like in my bedroom, bathroom, everywhere basically. So when I came home, like, all these sticky traps were down. So here's the caveat that is like the most ironic part of the whole thing. I lived in my apartment for 1 year. That's it. 1 year. And 2 weeks before I was going to move out, like, I had already put in my notice, I was moving out, I had my move out date. 2 weeks before is when I got bit. 2 weeks. Made it the whole year just fine. 2 weeks, got bit by a spider. Like, what is the irony? So we know it's the brown recluse because when I did move out 2 weeks later and we checked all these traps that they had put down just 2 weeks before, there were brown recluse all in my apartment. Tons of them. We found maybe like 12, I want to say. I think 8 of them, or six, somewhere between 4 and 8 were in just my bedroom alone. Like, they put one on either side of my bed under my nightstands. And we pulled out, like I said, I can't remember if it was between 4 or 8, somewhere in that number, just in my bedroom. So that solidifies it. Basically, what we kind of think happened is that the spider got into my t-shirt that I was going to sleep in that night. Because, I mean, we all do it. You don't, like, always wash your pajamas after wearing them. You just pick them up and put them on again. And if you're messy like me, throw it on the floor when you're getting ready. And that's what I had done. So that's what we assume happened, is that it had gotten in my t-shirt and I put it on, and that's how it like made contact. Because some of the things we learned about the brown recluse, like I mentioned before, is that they are very small. They're not very large spiders. They have recluse in their name for a reason. They don't like to be out and about. They want to be hidden, and they like dark spaces. So that's probably why it got into my t-shirt, because it was a dark, warm space. And because they're so small, they said actually you need some sort of pressure for the spider to successfully bite you. So the fact that, like, either, you know, I leaned on something or my t-shirt did it, something pushed the spider into my arm and caused the bite. We never did see bite marks because it was so small, but like very clearly I got bit. So my thing I like to say now is that I was poisoned. The whole time it was, you know, ongoing. I was like, I was poisoned. But let me tell you, it was an emotional roller coaster. It was painful. It was sad. Like, I was trying to lose weight for my wedding because I bought a wedding dress that was slightly too small because it was a good deal. And I was trying to lose weight, and now I can't exercise anymore because they didn't want me sweating because it would ruin the Band-Aid, and the sweat would get in my arm, and that was bad. And it was a whole ordeal. I didn't mention when I had the big hole in my arm, I was supposed to blast it with water every time I was in the shower to make sure it was nice and clean. So I had to get like a, you know, removable shower wand and like literally sit there and just blast it for like 5 minutes every time I showered. That didn't feel good. So yeah, that's kind of the progression of it. I'll also include pictures of what my scar looked like. I think I took those pictures. If I didn't, I might not have. I can't remember. But yeah, it was an interesting time. I would say in total, I think the duration was maybe like a month and a half before, like from getting bit to getting totally stitched up. So I do have a lot of pictures from that time where I had like my arm wrapped up, you know, my bridal shower, my arms wrapped up, but I lived. And I have always been afraid of spiders. As soon as like word got out on Facebook that I had, you know, gotten bit and that's what that was, and we were sharing pictures and things, all my friends and family were like, we are so sorry that we ever made fun of you for being afraid of spiders. Because I mean, I used to cry. I was so afraid of spiders, like used to cry. I hated them so much. I was so afraid of them. I actually saw something on television once of a boy, I think he got bit by maybe a black widow, and it did something similar where it like ate away at his flesh. And after seeing that, I was traumatized. I've been afraid of them ever since. But ironically, now that I've been bit, I'm not afraid of them anymore. I don't like them, but they don't scare me so much that I need to like cry or have someone else kill it for me. I will do it now. At this point, I think it's also, I've experienced the worst. So even if it were to happen again, I know what it would be like, I guess, and I know that, you know, I'll live. I am very, very thankful that it was just on the back of my arm and, you know, not like on my boob or on my leg or my face even, you know, somewhere that was maybe more visible. It's on the back of my arm and kind of in this back area where when it's down on my side, you don't even hardly notice. I remember my dad asked me before the wedding if I was going to try to cover up the scar with makeup. And I said, no, I'm not going to worry about it because, for one thing, I'm a big believer in like out of sight, out of mind. It's behind me. I don't even see it. So it's not something I remember all the time. If I can't see it, I'm not worried about it. And I figured everyone that was going to be at the wedding knew about it anyways, so they would know what it was. If it really showed up in some sort of photo, my photographer could edit it out. And I was, you know, I said I'd be more concerned about makeup smearing on my dress than anyone seeing the scar. You know, it's my battle wound at this point. They did cut out a big chunk of my arm. I'll show you here in a second. It did cut out a lot. I joked. I was like, can you do the other arm? So I'm like evened out because, listen, I've always been a little bit chunky and my arms are not thin. I've got bat flap arms, you know. So here's this arm with the spider bite. You can see that it's got this kind of arched chunk out of it. And then there's my regular arm. So you can see I'm always like, this is my skinny arm. This is my fat arm. Yeah, they wouldn't even me out. I tried. But that's, you know, that's the progression of it. It was very scary, but I do feel like I learned. I should have mentioned this already. They did tell me I was in like the top 5% that have a severe reaction. They did say that depending on the person, you'll react differently, and most people can get bit and they never even know. Some people get bit and it's just a little bit painful but goes away. Other people get bit and you get eaten away like I did and you have a fever and you feel terrible. And so they did say I was in the top 5% of bad reactions. So take that with, you know, what you will. Do your own research if you feel like it. The biggest thing to take away is that if you're in an area that brown recluse live, I mean, I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, so, you know, in the Midwest, they've always been something we've known about is a thing. The thing we learned is that your typical, like, spray or whatever, even if you have a professional come out and do your home, that won't kill them. Because like I said, they don't eat or drink anything, I guess, for long periods of time. So that's how typical spiders will die, is that they'll get the poison on their hands, and while they're like putting something into their mouth, that they eat the poison and they die. Brown recluse don't do that, so that's why that's not always the successful way to kill them. So the thing that attracts them are the sticky traps. You can buy them at any, you know, Home Depot. That's where I get mine, is I just go to my Home Depot in the pest control section and I get sticky traps, and I just put them in closets, I put them under my bed, I put them behind the toilet, just anywhere a spider might be. I've been very thankful in this house that we've purchased that we haven't really seen spiders here at all, even in the sticky traps. I don't find them. When I very first got bit, I even traveled with sticky traps and would put them down, like at my mother-in-law's house. I took them and put them down because we would stay in the basement, and I was just paranoid. But yeah, I don't do that anymore. So that would be my biggest takeaway, is if you're in an area that they live and you didn't know that, get yourself some sticky traps, especially during, you know, spring and summer months when they're more likely to be in your home. Really, I think they can be all year round, since they can go so long without water. They can live a long time. So I would just say get those sticky traps if you're in an area where they exist, and that's all you can really do. You know, don't reach into anything if you're reaching into a dark crawl space or an attic or a box that hasn't been touched for a long time. Wear gloves, because they could be in any of those places and they could get you there. If you do leave clothes on the floor, I still do it now. I do. I shouldn't, but I do. Shake your clothes out before you put them in. If you have shoes you haven't worn in a long time, shake them out. You know, all those things you've heard about before, do it. It could help. Again, I don't want to scare anyone, because everyone does react differently. This was just my story, and I know a lot of people do find it interesting, so I wanted to share it finally with all of you. Now I will close out the video, but stay tuned if you wanted to see the video. If you want to see the photos, I will insert them kind of all here once I'm done, so you can see the progression of kind of how it went. So stay tuned for that if you're interested. If not, click off now and give the video a thumbs up. Let me know down below if you have ever had anything like this happen, if you even have brown recluse where you live, if you've experienced any other venomous spider bites or anything like that. Let me know. I'm very interested. I definitely lived. It was not a pleasant experience, but I'm here, so it could have been worse. So yeah, like I said, click off now if you don't want to see any pictures, and if you do, let's get into them.
The itsy bitsy spider went